famous Hollywood actress Scarlett Johansson, and some guy were the only survivors of a shipwreck. They didn't know each other before the shipwreck, but he did know who she was. At the beginning, it was hard, but as time passed, this guy learned how to provide food and shelter. He started taking care of her, and eventually, she started caring about him. After all, there wasn't anybody else in the island. He eventually built a cabin, had a functioning automatic potable water supply, and all sorts of little clever commodities, all done to make her life easier. It was the most effort any man had ever done for her, and all the hard work made him fit. She noticed this. One night, after some wildlife attacked, and he defended her successfully, getting a few cuts in the process, she threw herself at him, and they made love. After that, they were, for all intents and purposes, a couple with an above-regular sex life. But for some reason, he started drifting away. Something was bothering him, and she noticed. "What's wrong?" Scarlett Johansson asked. "Nothing," the guy would say. She pestered him for a while, eventually saying she would do anything he needed or wanted to make him feel good again. Just because she really cared for him a lot, and even if he wasn't asking, she felt it was the least she owed it to him. "Really? You'll do anything I'd like?" "Yes," she said. "Anything." "Okay, first, I want you to take off your toga and get into this pair of work jeans that somehow washed on the shore." "Okay, now put this shirt on, please. But first, tape your boobs so they are flat." "What? Okay, I'd say I'd do anything," she said lovingly. "Okay, now, take this hat and wear it, but tuck your hair under it." She was kinda confused, but nonetheless, she wanted to make him happy, so she tucked her hair under the hat. "Now I'd like for you to grab this piece of soot and paint yourself a beard and a mustache." "Okay, if this is what you want," she muttered. "Now please put on these sunglasses and start walking down the beach. I'll catch up to you in a bit," he said, a bit excited. She started walking, wondering, doubting herself, just confused about what had just happened. Maybe it wasn't her, maybe it was. Suddenly the guy grabs her by her shoulder, turns her around and says, "Dude, you won't believe who I've been fucking for the past 6 months." The husband leans over and asks his wife, "Do you remember the first time we had sex together over 50 years ago? We went behind the village tavern, where you leaned against the back fence, and I made love to you." "Yes," she says, "I remember it well." "Okay," he says, "how about taking a stroll around there again? And we can do it for old time's sake?" "Oh, Jim, you old devil, that sounds like a crazy but good idea." A police officer, sitting in the next booth, heard their conversation, and having a chuckle to himself, he thinks to himself, "I've got to see these two old-timers having sex against a fence. I'll just keep an eye on them so there's no trouble." So he follows them. The elderly couple walks haltingly along, leaning on each other for support, aided by walking sticks. Finally, they get to the back of the tavern and make their way to the fence. The old lady lifts her skirt and the old man drops his trousers. As she leans against the fence, the old man moves in. Then suddenly, they erupt into the most furious sex that the policeman has ever seen. This goes on for about 10 minutes, while both are making loud noises and moaning and screaming. Finally, they both collapse, panting on the ground. The policeman is amazed. He thinks he has learned something about life and old age that he didn't know. After about half an hour of lying on the ground recovering, the old couple struggle to their feet and put their clothes back on. The policeman is still watching and thinks to himself, "This is truly amazing. I've got to ask them what their secret is." So, as the couple passes, he says to them, "Excuse me, but that was something else. You must have had a fantastic sex life together. Is there some sort of secret to this?" Shaking, the old man is barely able to reply. 50 years ago, that wasn't an electric fence. So Ed and Carolyn met on a singles cruise, and as soon as Ed laid eyes on Carolyn, he knew he had to get to know her. He made his move, and soon They discovered that they both lived in the same city, just a few miles apart. Ed was over the moon and couldn't believe his luck. He started taking Carolyn out on dates to all the best places in town: dance clubs, restaurants, concerts, movies, and museums. Each date was better than the last, and Ed was convinced that Carolyn was the one for him. One evening on the 1-month anniversary of their first dinner on the cruise ship, Ed took Carol into a fancy restaurant. As they sipped their cocktails and waited for their salad, Ed decided it was time for a serious talk. He wanted to make sure that Carolyn was on the same page as him before they took their relationship to the next level, and took a deep breath and said, "Carolyn, I have to be honest with you and head over heels in love with you. But before we take things any further, there's something you need to know about me. I'm a total golf nut. I eat, sleep, and breathe golf. I play it, I read about, and I watch it on TV. If that's going to be a problem for us, you need to tell me now." Carolyn smiled and replied, "Ed, that's not a problem at all. In fact, I love golf too. But before we go any further, there's something I need to tell you. For the last 5 years, I've been a hooker." Ed was taken aback, but decided to be understanding. "That's all right," he said. "I bet it's because you're not keeping your wrist straight when you hit the ball." 3 explorers get lost in a huge jungle. After wandering around for days, they are found and captured by a jungle tribe. The tribesmen take the explorers to their leader and drop them at his feet. The chieftain looks at them for a moment and says, "The 3 of you will die unless you manage to do a near impossible task. Each of you must gather 10 fruits of the same kind and bring them to me." The explorers cannot believe their luck at being given such an easy task. They set out their separate ways to find a fruit as fast as they can. The first one finds an apple tree and so quickly gathers 10 of them. The second one finds some cherries and plucks a bunch of them. They rush to the chieftain and present the fruits. The chieftain smiles and says, "Now you have to shove them up your ass one by one, and if you make any noise or facial expression, we'll throw you into a big pot. We'll boil you and eat you." The first explorer, resigned to his fate, puts on a brave face and starts shoving the apples. He gets to 4, and then he can't take it anymore. As soon as he yells in despair, the chief and his tribesmen throw it into a large cauldron, boil it, and eat it. The first explorer dies and reaches the gates of heaven, and while he is walking in, he sees the second explorer running to catch up with him. "Why are you here? I thought you only had 10 small cherries with you?" the first guy asks him. The second explorer laughs and says, "Well, all was going fine and I was just sliding the 9th cherry inside, but then I saw our friend dragging a cart of the big pineapples and I burst out laughing." My friends, if you want to watch other funny jokes, subscribe to the channel.